Hello, Stephen Bolger talking about André Kertész, A Life in Photographs. This is part 3. So we're now up to 1918. The fall of 18, the army disbands. Kertész comes home, goes back to his job at the bank, eventually meets the love of his life, pictured here over his right shoulder in yet another self-portrait. This is Elizabeth. So Elizabeth was a painter, knew a lot of other creative individuals. Kertész, through Elizabeth, became part of a larger circle of creative individuals and really started to pursue photography as more than just a casual hobby. It was something that started to consume him, not quite as much as Elizabeth though, that he was completely head over heels in love with her. And there was two rifts really. Like one was with the more traditional photography that was going on. By the early 20s, he started to participate in exhibits and salons. He would win awards. In 1923 though, he won an award that he refused eventually because the award winners were expected to print their photographs in the bromoil process, which would produce very painterly effects, but that was not how he wanted his photographs to be seen. And Elizabeth didn't think that he would achieve his potential by remaining where he was, that he needed to go off, needed to go to Paris to find himself, and when he did and became successful, she would join him. And he followed her advice. This is what he said was the last photograph that he took of the two of them before going to Paris. He received a 3-year visa to go to Paris, got there in 1925. These are some early photographs from that time. There was other creative Hungarians that were also in Paris. Met with Robert Capa, Brassai, Man Ray. But also there were other artists that were of great influence in changing the art world. Chagall, Fernand Léger, Alexander Calder. And so this modernist aesthetic was completely at odds with the type of pictorialism that he had left behind in Hungary, that very direct photographs, trying to really figure out the language of photography or rewrite a new language, trying to figure out what photographs could do that the other media couldn't and concentrate on that. This is an interesting sequence of 6 photographs of this horse that unfortunately was fatigued, probably undernourished, overworked. However, they revived the horse. So they could go on their merry way. The person that was, perhaps the greatest influence for him at this time is this gentleman, Piet Mondrian. The De Stijl movement was groundbreaking for art in general, and for Kertész in particular. You can see after this meeting in 1926 how the photographs that he began to take were a lot more direct, a lot more structured. This is a terrific picture in 1930. Should talk about the prints too in this show. So in terms of this one, this is done in 1930. It's a vintage print. The one I showed you of Mondrian, I'll just go back to it, is a carte postale. So probably the most famous type of vintage prints that Kertész was known to have made. They're contact prints. As we mentioned before, that Jenő, his younger brother, was really the technician of the family or of the duo, and Jenő remained in Hungary while Kertész was in Paris. So Kertész had to teach himself the other half of the medium, which was darkroom work, so processing, printing. And this type of paper was prepackaged, well, of course it was prepackaged, but what I'm trying to say, it helped the amateur make their own postcards, and they're laden with silver, so they produce beautiful tones. The only drawback is that the size of the paper was smaller than the size of the negative that he shot this photograph with, so he'd have to very carefully crop the photograph to make this contact print, and especially because he'd like to have this line going around to serve as a border. And in about 2 years, the schedule remains constant, there'll be a large exhibition at the Art Institute of Chicago of his carte postale. More on Mondrian in a subsequent film.